What is up, and welcome back to another episode of the Wizards podcast. I'm your host, Greg Finberg, and in today's episode, we have a lot to get to. I want to talk a lot more about the AJ Dybantsa selection. There was a lot that he said after he was picked that I found pretty interesting. A lot that Will Dawkins said about him and his role and the whole process to land on him as the best player in this class that I found very interesting and want to discuss further. But there's also the discussion of fit. How does AJ fit with the current core? How does the roster look now, the starting lineup, the rotations, now that you're adding in a premier scorer like the Bonza? And there's also more of the draft later tonight. You have round two, where Washington owns picks number 51 and 60. They could use those, consolidate them with their other seconds to make a big jump up to get another big, to get another point guard, or they could just stick and pick. They could trade out of the spots. There's a lot that could happen. There's a lot that I want to get to in this episode. So to start it off, I want to kind of dissect this Dybantsa pick because I recorded the episode yesterday and put that out. It's about 33 minutes, just kind of breaking down Dybantsa's game, how he fits with the team. So if you want a more deep look into his skill set, then you can go and watch that before circling back to this. But I kind of want to break down what this selection means for the team. There's a lot that came out after he was picked that we didn't know beforehand. ESPN's Shams Charania reported that while Dybantsa maintained in the pre-draft process that he met with Utah and Washington, but didn't work out with either team, Sham said he actually went through a pretty intensive workout with the Wizards that I believe he described as perfect. So again, it's kind of those things where I guess the Wizards were telling AJ, hey, don't say that you worked out for us, or don't say how well the visit or anything went. And so clearly that's what he did. But Shams is saying that Dybantsa worked out for Washington. And he also said that the Wizards knew for a decent bit that Dybantsa was going to be their pick. You know, it seems like they had him circled for years. I remember David Aldridge reporting after they won the lottery that Dybantsa is someone that they've watched and had circled for years, right? In terms of, evaluating talent and seeing the best players in this class. It seems like they landed on Dybantsa a decent bit ago. And it doesn't mean that they weren't extensive in their process. Wenger, Dawkins said multiple times that it's going to be an exhaustive process. They're going to look at all the possibilities at one, all the trade possibilities and everything that goes into it. And they're really going to dissect each of these prospects, which was Caleb Wilson and Cameron Boozer for sure, but mainly Dybantsa and Peterson. And so obviously it expresses some sort of confidence that they clearly had Dybantsa circled as their guy for a while, despite this being a good draft class. But it also signals like you had Peterson in for multiple workouts. You had a great look at Boozer, at Wilson, and you had Dybantsa in for a workout. And for Shams to come out here and say like it was pretty clear, it was pretty obvious that they were going to go with him. Like he has been their guy for a while. Kind of showcases the confidence they have in his ability to be this, big time piece, this number one scoring option, to really take this young core to the next level. And it seems like AJ couldn't be happier to be in Washington. He said as much, and he's done so much media over the last couple of days, but really the last 24 to 48 hours. Like right after he gets picked, he's on every single show. He was on the Breakfast Club on Tuesday morning. Wednesday morning, he's on Good Morning America. He's doing Sports Center with Scott Van Pelt. He's interviewed by JP Finley and other local media. Does his press conference. A lot of stuff. But pretty cool to see that he really wanted to be in Washington. Michael Winger was on the DC Sports Radio before the pick and said, look, we're taking a guy that has told us how much he wants to be here. Like he badly wants to be in Washington and be a part of this young core. And it's clear he obviously knew at the time he was talking about Dybantsa. So it just seems like he's excited. He's ready to go. He's ready to compete. They asked him what he's going to do when he gets to DC. And he's like, I'll see the monuments and stuff and I'll meet the players, but I want to work out if they let me. So again, it's kind of that personality, but also that drive to be great. Clearly, he seems like he's pretty excited to be in DC, and Seems like Winger, Dawkins, the whole staff were pretty ecstatic to add him. I mean, if you saw Will Dawkins called him right after they picked him. Seems like Will Dawkins is a pretty down to earth guy. He's going to be friends with all the people, and friends is a loose term because you can trade them at the same time that they're your friend, right? So it's a weird dynamic, but it seems like he's a very personable guy and gets along very well, relates very well to the players, and it was a very easygoing, flowing conversation between him and AJ, who clearly have gone off on the right foot, clearly have a lot in common and have common goals, share common goals of taking this team to the next level. So it was cool to see that rapport between GM and who projects to be this franchise superstar. Um, he also had a couple of Wizards reach out to AJ. I saw, he got a call from Alex Sarr, which was pretty cool. Just kind of Alex saying, "Look, welcome to the city, welcome to the team. If you need anything to acclimate yourself, you have my number. Reach out." Always nice to see players, being open like that to a new player that's coming into a team. I'm sure you've all by now seen not only Trae Young's reaction, saying he's gonna love DC. I was all smiles, seemed really excited to add AJ, but also tweeted out that he's happy to welcome AJ to the city, and they'll figure the number stuff out as they go on. I find that funny because if you missed it, AJ was on Gilbert Arenas' podcast a couple weeks ago, and said he's gonna have to talk to Trae Young about number 3, which he wore at BYU and Trae Young wears now at the Wizards. Clearly joking. I said it as much that I don't know why people are making this a big deal, saying he's disrespecting Trae Young. Trae clearly joked about it in his tweet, joked about it over the phone when they talked. It's not a big deal. They'll figure the number stuff out, but it seems like Trae's really excited to have him here. He called AJ, welcomed him to the city, and Trae being the leader of this team, that's always cool to see them embracing this rookie with open arms. So Sarr, Young, I'm sure he talked to more Wizards throughout the night, but that was cool to see as well. And like I mentioned with all of the media, right? With that comes a lot of questions about not only how he viewed this night. He clearly seemed like he was pretty confident he was always going to go number 1. But there was also a question to Will Dawkins about how AJ is viewed in his mind. Is he a wing? Is he a forward? Is he a guard? How does he fit in? And Dawkins called him one of the tallest, called this team now one of the tallest guard groups in the league, and said he's excited to add AJ Dybantsa into that, which again doesn't necessarily mean that Dawkins is saying he is a true guard, but it's clearly him speaking as if he could play guard. And on a team like this that has a lot of people that can play anywhere, again, going back to this positional versatility thing that Dawkins and Winger love, you could play AJ at the 2, at the 3, or the 4, realistically. Obviously, he's not a 5, and he can handle the ball, but I don't think, at the moment at least, he's developed enough decision-making wise and core vision wise and handle wise to be a point guard. But you can put him at the 2 guard as just a primary scorer that can hopefully add an outside jumper. But he can certainly obviously play the 3, and he definitely has the size at 6'9", 7-foot wingspan to play the 4. So he can play a lot of different positions. I'm sure Washington will try him all across the board. But with all the talent they have, I think playing him at the 2 isn't the worst thing. He's quick, he's agile, he's athletic. It's not like he can't stay with 2s on defense, and it's not like he can't blow past 2s on offense. So him saying that he is getting added to one of the biggest guard groups in the league is kind of on par with what I expected. He can play multiple positions, certainly the 2 guard at that. He was also asked, I believe, by my good friend Josh Valdez at Clutch Points about playing off ball, what his role will be. And he said, look, I can play off ball. I did it at Prolific Prep in high school when he was playing next to Stokes. He said he did it on Team USA when he wasn't the number 1 option, played more off ball. And he clearly believes he can do it at the next level. Said he has to learn his role alongside Trae and AD and all the other players on this team. And he's excited to do that. But the one thing that stuck out to me is it seems like every time he was asked about what he can improve or what he's most looking forward to improving, defense was at the top. I think Will Dawkins and Michael Winger got to him in those meetings. Like, you need to be a lot better on defense, and you're incredible on offense, and we know that. But the defensive end is something you need to buy into because you have the size, you have the athleticism, you have the length, you have the quickness to be an incredible defender, to be a really disruptive perimeter defender. But you got to buy in on that end. You got to buy in effort-wise, but also in the film room, in practice, and in your development to better learn how to be a more impactful defender, because he has all the tools. He has the traits to do it. So it's nice to see, him mentioned multiple times. You got to be able to guard 94 feet. Got to be able to buy into your role as a guy that can score, but also be impactful on defense. And so that's something that I enjoyed hearing from him in his pressers. But again, very professional, big personality, but very professional. Says all the right things. Seems like he's over the moon. Probably excited to have this process over with and just ready to get in the gym with these guys, get ready for summer league, and really just get to playing basketball. He's gonna get introduced Thursday morning with a press conference. I won't be there. I believe we have someone from Bullets Forever that will be, but I know a bunch of other local media will be there to kind of have you guys covered on everything Dybantsa says. Should be a pretty fun presser. And then I think, depending on if they keep the day 2 picks, whatever they do, those guys won't be introduced until Friday, is my understanding. So I think it's 2 separate press conferences, which is different because if you remember last year, Watkins' second round pick was introduced at the same time that Riley and Johnson were introduced. Maybe they want to have a separate one because AJ is so big and they don't want to overshadow whoever they pick in the second round, because I doubt anybody would ask them questions. I mean, it's the number 1 pick, right? So that's Thursday morning. Be on the lookout for coverage of that. Should be a pretty fun day for the Wizards to introduce Dybantsa, for him to really see the city, meet the team, etc. So yeah, pretty fun times ahead. Feels like he said all the right things. Seems like he could play guard. He could play the 3 or the 4. But he's happy to be in DC, and it seems like all along, no matter how much the Wizards tried to fool everyone, they weren't trading the pick unless they got a Godfather offer, and they weren't moving off of AJ unless they saw something otherworldly in workouts from Peterson, Boozer, or Wilson. So Dybantsa is the pick, and that kind of brings me into how he fits, right? There's a lot of good depth at certain position groups on this Wizards roster, namely guard and wing. If you look at I'm hesitant to say depth chart because I don't want to place certain guys in certain categories. Yet I'm not the coach. There's a lot unknown with how this team will mesh together. So I'm just going to kind of go through the roster per position as I have it laid out right now. And these are just the guys that are under contract on standard deals. At guard, you got Trae Young, Trey Johnson, Bub Carrington, Jaden Hardy, and D'Angelo Russell. Obviously, Trae Young is your starting point guard. You could start Trey Johnson at the 2. If not, you're probably looking at a bench backcourt of Trey Johnson and Bub Carrington, which is incredible still. Really young, really talented, and really good shooting to space the floor, can run in transition. That's a pretty good 1-2 punch off your bench at the guard position. Jaden Hardy still under contract for 2 more years at $6 million each. Shot over 40% from 3 on a high volume of attempts in a couple games after he was traded to the Wizards last year. He's still young. I think he's 22 or maybe he's 23 at the moment in year 3 or 4. He's still a quality player. I don't know if there's necessarily a spot for him in the rotation, but I don't view him as someone they're looking to move off of very quickly or salary dump or even buy out. It's all right, a contract. He's a decent player to have, at the very tail end of your roster. And he can shoot the ball in case someone goes down, unfortunately, with an injury. That's not the case necessarily maybe for D'Angelo Russell, who is 30 years old, making $6 million, opted into the player option, not the other way around where the team opted to keep him. Doesn't have the greatest market as shown by the fact that he wasn't bought out last year, didn't report to the team last year, whether that was his decision or the team's. It just doesn't seem like he's going to be on the roster on opening night. If he is, it doesn't seem like they're going to try to feature him whatsoever in this rotation. But that said, he opted in. He's on a guaranteed deal. He's under contract. So we're going to include him. And so that's the 5 real true guards they have on this team. And some other guys like Bilal, Will Riley, even Dybantsa could be guards, but I categorize them differently in this list. And the second position group that's pretty deep is the wing position, which I think is sort of a combination of your forward and guard positions. You got AJ Dybantsa, Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, Will Riley, and Jameer Watkins. Again, to me, seems like you start 2 of these guys. Keyshawn George, AJ Dybantsa are the best 2, I think, at the moment of this group. Those are the guys that I would start. If they view Dybantsa as a 2, then it's pretty easy. You start him at the 2. Keyshawn's your best three, AD and Sar at the front court, Trey at the one. That makes a lot of sense. You could also go vice versa. I don't think it necessarily matters. I think for the most part, apart from Trey at point guard, this team wants to play positionless basketball, and I think they now have the personnel to do so. But again, a pretty crowded wing room. And then off the bench, you got Bilal Coulibaly and Will Riley that I think should be your tandem at the 3 and the 4. You might be a little undersized at the 3 and the 4 if those are your guys off the bench. But that said, I think both of these guys need playing time. Certainly Bilal, but I think a lot of people are sleeping on Will Riley. I don't think it was just this big boom at the end of last year because it was garbage time against bad teams. Like he was doing it against teams trying to make the playoffs, trying to make the play-in. And he did it pretty consistently when he was starting and given the minutes and the runway to do so. Really good handles, really good ball skills, showed an ability to shoot the ball, can get to the rim, draw contact, good intermediate game. Like he's kind of got everything. It's 6'9", still growing, could be 6'10", who knows? He's really crafty, and I certainly think he'll be a part of the rotation. So I think 2 guards off the bench is probably Trey Johnson, Bub Carrington. 2 wings off the bench, probably Bilal and Will Riley. Jameer Watkins probably not featured in the rotation to start the season. Doesn't mean he won't be at any point. He's still an incredible defender who showed an ability to knock down the 3 at the end of last season. But that said, I don't know how you can rationalize playing him over Riley or Coulibaly at the wing and at the guard position. I don't know how you can rationalize playing him over Carrington or Johnson unless it's a situation where you need defense at the end of a game, at the end of the first half, in the closing seconds, whatever it is. Then maybe strategically you can rationalize it. But I just don't know if he features at the moment into the rotation. But definitely should be back. Whether they pick up his team option, renegotiate it, he'll be on the roster in some capacity. And then the forward spot, you kind of start to see a little bit less depth. You got Anthony Davis, who projects to be a starting power forward here. Will he be on the roster by opening night? I think by the day, I get a little bit less convinced. I saw John Wall was asked this last night on DC Talk Radio and really didn't sound convinced that AD would be here too much longer, whether it's at the deadline or even before the season. I saw a report from Jake Fisher that the Trailblazers are a team that could be waiting to acquire him, maybe as other suitors. I don't know, but honestly, by the day, it seems less likely that, number one, Washington is willing to give him an extension, but that Anthony Davis is willing to really play as big of a role without having some sort of extension ready or looming. And maybe that's what forces both of their hands at some point. Behind him, you got Justin Champagnie, who, again, very versatile player. I think he could play the 2 as much as he can play the 4 and the 3. He's probably best suited as a 3 or 4 man that can space the floor. Probably better for a 3. But that said, they don't have too much depth at forward, and they could really use someone who's 6'6", 6'7", that can space the floor, that can add some mobility to this lineup and run in transition. Good rebounder as well for the position, so not like you're lacking there. It's tough, right? Because if you have Trey and Bub off the bench as your guards, you have Riley and you have Coulibaly as your wings. I don't think Champagnie can really play a small ball 5, so it's like who's out of the rotation? Because I think going 11 deep is pretty ridiculous at the NBA level, especially when you want to shorten your rotations if you do make the playoffs or play-in. So again, I don't know if there's a spot for him in the rotation. I would hope there is, but I'm glad I'm not making the decisions, right? Because it's a good problem to have, but it will be tough to see who really emerges from that crowded wing and forward position to get those minutes off the bench. You also got Cam Whitmore in there, who I know he didn't have that great of a season. He obviously missed, more than half of it with the blood clots or the vein thrombosis in his shoulder, but he still has potential, right? He's only entering his 4th year. He's still 21 years old. He's 6'8". I think it was like 250 when he measured before the season last year. He's a big dude. So I certainly think he's big enough to play, a more mobile power forward type position. But again, it's kind of like him, Watkins, Champagnie. They're great, but they might just not have a spot in the rotation, which is crazy to say, but that's just what it might be at some point. And again, a lot can happen between now and October. You have summer league, you have training camp for people to really show their worth and to show that they should be part of the rotation. But this is just kind of the viewpoint of now, kind of judging on what the production was last season. And then you look at the center position, right? Alex Sarr broke the foot, should be back by the start of the season. He's your clear starter at center alongside Anthony Davis. And then the only backup option you have at center, I guess, is Tristan Vukcevic, who I think is more of a stretch four, but he is 7 foot and he is big enough to make some sort of impact at the center position. He started at center multiple games. He backed up Sar at multiple games at center. So they've used him as a center for the most part. I think that's probably what they view him as. I don't know if he's ready. He's 23. He's still young, got a long way to go, but is he ready for the big time? Like, is he ready to really be a backup that's logging 20 to 25 minutes a night on a consistent level? Is his defense at the level it needs to be to protect the rim and to serve as that anchor on the defense on the second unit? These are all questions that he'll have to answer when he plays in the preseason and start the year. But if I'm the Wizards, I'm looking to either add another big through the draft, or I'm looking to add one in free agency with some of the cap space you have between where you're at now and the luxury tax at 201 million. So again, I would look for a more proven commodity to back those guys up, or if not, I would look for someone else to compete with Tristan for that spot, another young player in the draft, which I think is a perfect segue, pat myself on the back, into the last part of this pod, which is sort of previewing tonight's second round of the draft. There's certainly a lot that can happen in the second round. It's not as easy as predicting the Wizards are going to take AJ Dybantsa at number one. Like, this is going to be a lot different, a lot more unknowns, a lot more possibilities to trade, etc. in this spot. And Washington, as it stands, currently owns 2 picks here, 51 and 60. Neither are their own. They actually own the 31st pick, or at least would have owned the 31st pick in the draft. Obviously, because their first round pick didn't convey, that was sent to the New York Knicks as part of the John Wall, Russell Westbrook trade. It would have gone obviously to Houston, but that pick went and changed hands a bunch of times. Now lands with New York. And again, next year, Washington's second round pick will go to New York too. So this is the first year of that trade really conveying, which is crazy because that was at the end of 2020. And now the first pick that's being sent out is June 2026. Kind of shows how crazy these trades, these protections can be if they never convey. But that said, the Wizards own 2 picks. 51 is from a trade with Minnesota, and 60 is from a trade with Oklahoma City, or at least from trades that allowed Washington to acquire those selections that would have belonged to those teams. So there's a lot of talent that will be available, obviously, towards the back end of this draft. If you're Washington, yes, you want to be higher. There's a lot of good prospects that probably thought they would go in round 1. I know Malik Thomas from Arkansas probably wouldn't have stayed in the draft if he didn't think he would go round 1. Obviously, Isaiah Evans, really good shooter from Duke. He's still available. You have Henry Vasar, who we'll talk about in a second, from UNC, probably the best big available. I probably think those guys are going to go early in the second round. It seems like New York's even shopping 31, and Memphis is possibly targeting a guard at 32. So there could be a lot of movement. There's certainly always, I think, more movement in round 2 than there tends to be in round 1. And you also have the looming possibility of a guy that you are willing to draft, but would give on, a two-way deal or a G League contract in the second round. Sometimes, as crazy as it sounds, prospects say, hey, don't draft me in the second round because I want to sign with this team because they'll give me a guaranteed contract. And so it's a lot of maneuvering in round 2. Just because you want to pick some guy doesn't necessarily mean he wants to get picked by you, which is a fascinating wrinkle. It's, I think, probably the smart thing to do. Like, go where you think you're valued more and you'll get more money. But very interesting to compare round 1 versus round 2. No one's saying don't draft me anywhere in round 1, especially towards the later end. That said, I think going through the depth chart, the roster that we just did, it's pretty clear that there's a hole in the front court for Washington, more so at center than at forward. But I think they want to at least bring someone in to compete with Tristan Vukcevic if you're looking to go through the draft and not free agency. And to me, I just put out an article on Bullets Forever that kind of breaks these players down a little bit further. So if you want more in-depth analysis, it's the main story right now on bulletsforever.com. So go and check that out if you want. But while you're here, I'll just kind of break down some of the guys that I think could be available in that spot or possible targets if they trade up. The first being Henry Vasar, center from UNC, 7-footer, who, again, I think is the second best player on ESPN's best available, probably gone between the first 3 to 5 picks in the second round. So you're looking at, a 15-plus pick jump if you're Washington to go up and acquire him, or at least require the pick to select him, which to me would, number one, also, pretty easily require you sending out 51 and 60. Would probably require at least one more second round pick. Maybe the price tag is richer and it's two. It's a lot to give up to get him, but if you feel like your roster is somewhat complete, you feel like you have this bevy of second round picks you've been dying to use, and you really think that Vasar can be a really competent backup big for you, then go for it. I think his upside is that of like a Walker Kessler type, where like he was really big but not that mobile. And a lot of teams passed on him and decided, we want a more mobile big. And Walker Kessler was like, all right, I'm just going to block every shot and be a really impactful player. I wouldn't say he's the same skill-wise as Walker Kessler, because I think Vasar can shoot better. I think Kessler can protect the rim a lot better. But I'm just saying, I think the knock on Vasar has been that he's not the most mobile. Maybe that's why he's slipping out of the first round. But again, if you're 7 foot, I think there's always some sort of role for you in this league. And at the skill set that he possesses, I think it's certainly there. I mean, average 17 and 9 per game on a good UNC squad, 1.2 blocks per game, showed he could protect the rim, shot 61% from the field, very efficient. This 42.6% clip from three is what I have circled here. Like at 7 foot to shoot this well from three, to be that much of a threat from the outside, is incredible. And for a team like Washington that values size, defense, and shooting, Vasar checks all of those boxes and more. So if you want him, he's very, very talented, but it's going to be expensive, I think, to move up and take him. And I just don't know if that's in the realm of possibilities for the Wizards. Moving on to some more realistic targets, if they stick and pick at 51, you got Felix Okpara, forward from Tennessee, averaged 8 and 6, 1.5 blocks per game, 60% from the field. Very, very solid player. 37% damn near from three. So again, can stretch the floor, willing 3-point shooter, 6'10", 240-pound forward, good rim protector, and I think a bruising rim protector. Like can really body up the people, wall up to bigs on the interior, which is something the Wizards have lacked in recent years. And just someone that I think could really add some size and some strength to bolster this front court. I think he's probably going to go earlier than the Wizards pick. I think probably within the first 10 to 15 picks. So again, someone you'd have to consolidate 51 and 60 to move up realistically to get, but still really talented, really athletic, bruising forward they could look to add. Trevin Brazil from Arkansas is the guy of this group that I think probably best fits the mold Dawkins and Winger have typically valued, which is a guy that's 6'10", 6'11", incredible wingspan, can go up and block shots, blocked 1.6 per game, but also the length and the anticipation to disrupt the offensive end in the passing lanes, averaging 1.5 steals per game. So that's over three stocks per game for a guy that's 6'11", but can also stretch the floor. Didn't shoot the greatest percentage from three at 34%, but still willing and capable from that end. 52% from the field, 13.7 boards. He's a solid offensive contributor. Definitely no slouch on that end, but defensively, that length, that size is something I think they would value. And if you want someone that can jump out of the gym, this guy can do it. I mean, he's an incredible athlete at his size. So definitely someone that kind of fits the prototype of what Dawkins has typically valued. And we'll see if he's available. I think he's probably gone by 51. But again, you can always package those to move up if you think he's really that good. Another two players that I think are the more possible of these five guys to just be straight up available at either 51 or 60. Ugana Onyensu from Virginia, center. I mean, this guy at 6'11" is one of the most fun players I watched in the pre-draft process. Like, he had 9 blocks against Duke in the ACC tournament. They lost by 4, but he was all over the court against one of the best teams in the conference, or in the country, really. Again, offensive numbers, 6.5 points, 5 boards, not awesome. Again, played 18.6 minutes per game. So it wasn't like he was, running 30 plus a game. So the counting stats aren't there. The 3-point shot was 28%, but was shooting about 40% towards the end of the season. So developed on that end. But again, 2.9 blocks per game. You could make a case that this guy is the most gifted rim protector behind a Caleb Wilson in this entire draft class, behind maybe an Ade Mara in this entire draft class, certainly outside the lottery. This guy's going to block shots. He's going to be an incredibly disruptive defender. And if you're coming in asking a guy off the bench to kind of just, protect the rim, bruise up and wall up to opposing centers, and also grab rebounds, be able to dunk it when he's open, be able to score around the rim at a efficient clip. Like, this is your guy. And if they were available at 51 and the first three guys were gone, I think I would have run this pick in so fast. Like, he's one of the guys I'm more high on in this class. And lastly, I got Malik Brown from Duke. Just 5 points, 5 boards a game. Nothing that's going to jump off the page. But again, didn't play too many minutes, as sort of started some games where was backing up some games at Duke. But nearly 2 steals a game, which is incredible for a player of his size. He's only 6'8", so a small ball forward or center, but can play that role pretty well. 63% from the field. When he shoots it, it's efficient. Doesn't have much of a 3-point shot. So again, I don't know how much they value that, but I mean, he knows his role. Like, sets screens, rebounds the ball, makes effort plays, and is arguably one of the best defenders in this class. Was ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Incredibly disruptive defender, whether he's defending, guards and wings, or he's defending forwards and centers. He can kind of do it all on that end. And if they're at 60, he's available. If they have the pick, that's who I think I would target if you aren't already looking to draft a big at 51. So those are just some options for Washington in that area. And that's what I'm going to do for this episode of the Wizards podcast, breaking down the Dybantsa pick, how he fits, breaking down how he, shifts into this roster, and also some targets Washington could take later on in the draft at 51 and 60. I'll have coverage throughout the night for this draft. Obviously, we'll have some articles on Bullets Forever breaking down those selections, but also should have some other guests lined up. I think my guy Damo is going to come on at some time this week. My guys at Locked On Wizards are going to come on the pod as well, and just kind of break down this draft in totality and break down where this Wizards team, lies at the moment. It's looking pretty good. It's looking like it's on its way up, but still a lot of work to do, I think, for this team to really round itself out. And we'll see if they add 2 more guys at 51 and 60 tonight. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Wizards podcast. Thanks for listening as always.